So John got the telescope. Now I was hoping that it might be here, so I don't have a picture of it, but if anybody's interested in my book, they'll find. With this telescope, then John really was able to take off and do some pretty serious astronomy. He started studying the moon, and I've combined two drawings here from a journal, which actually they're not next to each other, but I've put them together. That's John's drawing of the crater Gassendi, and this is Gaubert's, a French astronomer's drawing of the same crater. There's a lot I could say. Notice how John picks out the slumping in the walls here with his little telescope, and Gaubert with a much more powerful telescope gets more detail on the floor of the crater. Okay. But this was published in a journal which took me several years to realise John was publishing in the English Mechanic. So you have to look in unexpected places to find where John was working. And he was an avid publisher, an avid writer. So he did quite a lot of work on the moon, and the result was that Julius Schmidt, when he was compiling his enormous map of the moon in the, well, through 20 years, but in the 1870s he was finally publishing it, put John's name on the moon. This is the North Pole, inverted image, and here is Plato. Where are you? Oh, there. Plato there, Anaxagoras here. And here is Birmingham, this walled plain. Well, it soon became realised that a walled plain wasn't a place to have, didn't merit and shouldn't have a name, and therefore a crater had to be found in there, and it has done, but it's rather unsatisfactory. I think people are still a little bit unhappy about it. But here's a nice picture of the moon showing Plato and Anaxagoras. And Birmingham, you can just pick it out, is this crater here, filled with ejecta. So it is a crater, but it's not normal to give a crater which is deeply buried in ejecta an individual name. But to me, that fits it exactly, because John's reputation, his whole life's work has become obscure, so to have an obscure crater somehow fits. Now, with that, and there was a very active English amateur astronomer, you've all heard of him, Thomas, the Reverend Thomas William Webb, Hereford, there he is, very nice character, published Celestial Objects for Common Telescopes. In the last reissue, 1962, I would stand to be corrected, still being used. But in the introduction to this, written after Webb died, there's the statement, tantalisingly brief, that Webb and Birmingham shared a deep love of music. I'd love to know what music it was that they liked, but I'd imagine with a Stradivarius violin, John would be playing classical music, surely. But I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the reputation he had up at Millbrook with his tenants, who he got on extremely well with, he didn't play the odd gig as well. But it was Webb who Birmingham acknowledges put him on to his life work, his magnum opus, which was to catalogue, to make a listing of all the red variable stars. Just a few pictures of some people we meet again. That's Huggins there on the left. That's Webb with his wife there. And the man who produced the second edition of John's catalogue, so I'll talk about next, Espin from County Durham, produced a posthumous second edition. Now it was Webb who recommended to John that he try to make this listing. And there already were lists being produced by several well-known astronomers. John Herschel was producing one. Struve at Pulkover Observatory, St. Petersburg, Secchi, the Jesuit astronomer in Rome, and most of all, Hans Schellerup in Copenhagen. But what was needed was a comprehensive catalogue, because astronomers were beginning to realise that red variable stars could give a hint into the evolution of stars. And it was just about this time that astronomers were beginning to realise that stars would have an evolution which could be expressed as, for most of them, as a general life history that would apply in particular to the what we call the main sequence stars now. So John started on this catalogue, and being the easy, nice fellow he was, he got excellent cooperation from everyone. He went around the continent to all these people, but especially to Schellerup here, who I got a photograph or a portrait of from the present director of the Copenhagen Observatory, who says that, like John Birmingham, nothing remains of his work, it's all been destroyed. By the way, John's astronomical notes, which he must have made in detail, his drawings of the moon, all his observations to produce his catalogue of the red stars, he sent to Webb, bequeathed them to Webb when he was dying. Webb died a few months later and bequeathed them to Espin in Tolor. When Espin died in 1932, I think it was, I'm told by those who live near Tolor in Durham that the local people reported that the bonfire, burning all the papers of Espin, took 2 days to burn. So that was John's work on his smoke. Likewise, nothing's been kept of Schellerup. But John went there often enough to become quite proficient in Danish, as well as having German, French, and Italian. Here's Julius Schmidt, a picture which I've got from the present director of the Athens Observatory. And there's Secchi, Angelo Secchi, the Roman observer. Well, John's catalogue was finished in 1876. Here are the contents of that issue of the Transactions of the Royal Irish Academy. And it's interesting. Birmingham's Red Stars Observation and Catalogue. Burton at Mars at oppositions in 1871-73. Doverk up at Markree on the binary stars, various binary stars. And Dreyer, a supplement to John Herschel's general catalogue of the nebulae cluster of stars. So John is in good company in that volume. Well, he catalogued 658 red variable stars. He went into great detail to justify the inclusion of these stars according to colour, and he compares the colours assigned by Struve and Secchi. And he'd always quote the original language. So anyway, he realised that the colours were changing according to when they were observed, because they didn't always match, and I don't have time to go into that, but I just want to get across he was not just taking his observation of the colour of the star as necessarily correct, or absolute, I should say. Likewise, the magnitudes. He would compare the magnitudes estimated by various observers. Now, this is from the second edition, so Birmingham has been put in by Espin, Copeland at Dunsink and Dreyer, Webb and Pickering in the USA at Espin. So this is compared against Argelander's standard, the Durchmusterung, and we see how carefully, again, the work of John Birmingham was, because Espin was taking John's work in this, even though John had died when this table was published. He actually made the listing. And so, here's a page, typical page from the catalogue, which even I can hardly read, but just to give you an idea of the work that went into it. John Birmingham's number, the number in Schellerup's previous catalogue, the Danish astronomer, and in Schmidt's catalogue, who'd also been making one, the star's name with the prefix, Greek or Latin prefix, right ascension, the catalogue was ordered from right ascension 0, right round the circle, and annual precession, declination, annual precession, magnitude, and then various notes, detailed notes on when the star was observed, the colour of it, so that people could read if there had been variations in colour with time and make their own judgments. Enormous amount of detail. And then an exceedingly important addenda to the catalogue was all the spectral observations that had been published on these stars. So this is giving an impression of intensity upwards, brighter. So we see the broad spectrum here, the continuous spectrum, with lines, for example, potassium, magnesium in the blue, sodium in the yellow, hydrogen in the red. And here we see a more orthodox type of presentation of the spectrum, but doesn't give the intensity variations as well. That's more for demonstrating the spectral lines in their complexity. So the result of this was, and I'm running out of time, that John Birmingham was presented a few months before he died, as it happened, with the Cunningham Gold Medal of the Royal Irish Academy. And John had done an enormous amount of other astronomy, for example on Jupiter's cloud belts, studied the oppositions of Mars and so on. I typed this out myself, but this is the address of Sir Samuel Ferguson, President of the Royal Irish Academy, introducing the Academy to John Birmingham and justifying the presentation of the medal. The actual minutes in the Royal Irish Academy are here. Secretary read the report by Mr. Samuel. I've cut that off. This is not Samuel Ferguson. Okay, but I would just like to quote what Samuel Ferguson said. You content yourself with noting facts and shunning plausible but doubtful methods of accounting for them. John was not a speculator, he liked to just state what the facts were, which can be a bit disappointing to those who are eager to know what he thought. Cause these things. Of you let it be said, sic itur ad astra. Proceed with the best wishes of the Academy and bear back with you to the Birmingham country this medal as a token and assurance to our brethren beyond the Shannon that wherever Irishmen devote their leisure to higher learning, there exists for them here a body having perpetual succession and so on to encourage and reward those who work in the cause of learning and science. There we are. So, that's really a horrid account of John's astronomy, but I'll just end with something that maybe John himself would approve of. Here's a letter to the Galway Vindicator, telling the Vindicator that they got their month wrong about the positions of Saturn and Mars. But he says, by way of recompense, if they wait till the 28th, they'll find that Antares will be occulted by the moon. And the occultation will take place not far within the southern limb or verge of the moon's disk. Now, some of you have heard this already, but this is how he finishes. On 12th of November, there will be a transit of the Earth and Moon across the Sun, as seen from Mars. A phenomenon full of interest to any observer who has the means of going there. Thank you.